AITA for letting karma handle my fiancée after she admitted our wedding was a scam? My name is Brian. I am 31 years old, and for almost 5 years I was with Megan. Our relationship was never one of those whirlwind stories that begin with sparks flying. Ours was quieter, something that grew slowly over time. We met at the distribution center where we both worked ordinary jobs in a mid-sized city in the Midwest. She handled administrative tasks in the office, and I coordinated shipments and logistics on the warehouse side. Our shifts lined up, our lunch breaks overlapped, and those small shared moments gradually turned into a routine. Megan was organized, straightforward, and always clear about what she wanted. That was one of the things I admired about her. I, on the other hand, tend to be more reserved. I do not like overcomplicating things or worrying about far-off possibilities. I focus on the present and handle whatever comes up. At first, that balance worked. She made the plans, and I went along. She suggested something, and I either agreed or made small adjustments. It was a simple way of being together, but over time those differences started to feel heavier than I had expected. The first time she brought up moving in together came after almost 2 years. She did not frame it as a question, but as the next logical step. I think we have reached that point, she told me one evening while we sat at the kitchen table in her apartment. I did not refuse, but I also did not answer right away. I paused for a few seconds. It could make sense, I said, but I am not sure right now is the best time. She set her fork down. She did not create a scene, but her expression shifted. And when would be a good time for you? I did not have a clear answer, not because I did not want to move forward, but because I had never pictured it in concrete terms. For me, things were comfortable the way they were. That was the first time I sensed we might not be seeing the future exactly the same way. Even so, a few months later we moved in together. It was not a decision I felt completely certain about, but it was not forced either. It felt more like a combination of habit and convenience. It seemed like the natural next step, so we took it. At first, sharing the 2-bedroom apartment in the quiet complex had its advantages. We spent more time together, split expenses, and it gave a sense of moving forward. But small differences soon appeared. Megan had very specific ideas about how shared living should work: schedules, keeping things tidy, dividing responsibilities in a structured way. Nothing extreme, but definitely organized. I followed through, yet not always to the level she expected. It is not that difficult, she would say. You just have to set it up properly from the start. We did not have loud arguments, but those little tensions built up. Still, I never thought it was anything serious. If someone had asked me back then how I pictured our future, I would have said stable, maybe not thrilling, but solid. The subject of marriage came up almost a year after we moved in together. Once again, it was not really a question. I do not want to waste any more time, she said directly one afternoon. If this is serious, we should make it official. I remember staying quiet for a few seconds, not because I was against it, but because it felt like everything was moving quickly, even though years had passed. I am not saying no, I replied, but I think we could wait a little longer. She did not like that answer. She did not raise her voice or show obvious frustration, but the distance I already knew returned, polite, cool, and far away. Days passed like that, short conversations, neutral replies, no direct fights, but no real closeness either, until one day I simply gave in. It was not an emotional choice, it felt practical. When I looked at it objectively, there was no strong reason to say no. We had been together for years, we shared an apartment, and there were no major issues. So I agreed. Okay, I told her. We decided to get married. With that decision, her attitude warmed again, even more than before. She began talking about dates, venues, and details. She threw herself completely into the planning. I took part too, but to a lesser degree, not because I did not care, but because I did not have strong opinions about most of it. For me, as long as it stayed simple and manageable, that was enough. That was where the first real tension surfaced. I want something nice, she said. Not huge, but special. Sure, I answered. But we need to be realistic with the budget. My finances were not terrible, but they were not comfortable either. I had some savings in the bank, yet not enough to spend freely. I explained that to her from the beginning. We can keep it modest, I told her. Small, with just our closest people. She hesitated for a few seconds, but finally seemed to accept it. The preparations moved quickly, almost too quickly. In less than 3 months, Everything was basically set. We reserved a modest banquet room at the local community center, arranged basic but decent catering, and added simple decorations. Nothing fancy, but nothing overlooked either. Even so, the costs added up faster than I had planned. Between the dress, the venue, the food, and the details, the total grew. I ended up using nearly all my savings and taking out a small personal loan from the credit union to cover the rest. I was not thrilled about the loan, but I saw it as an investment in our future because at that point I still believed it was. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. I woke up before the alarm, not because I felt especially excited, but because of that odd feeling you get when you know something important is about to happen. I got ready calmly and double-checked that everything, depending on me, was in order. I am not someone who gets very nervous, but that morning I wanted to make sure I had done my part right. I drove to the community center early. The place looked just as we had left it the day before, clean, organized, and straightforward. The tables were set, the decorations were up, and the catering staff was preparing in the back. It was not an impressive event, but it was not embarrassing either. It was exactly what we had agreed on. Little by little, the guests began to arrive. There were not many of us. Between distant relatives, a few coworkers, and a couple of acquaintances, there were about 35 people total. I have never had a large social circle, and Megan knew that from the start. She had not invited many people either, so it did not seem odd at the time because we had planned an intimate gathering. The atmosphere stayed calm, with quiet conversations and occasional laughter as people found their seats. Everything seemed to be going as expected, except for one detail. Megan was not arriving. At first I did not think much of it. "It is normal," someone nearby commented. "Brides are usually a little late." I nodded and tried to stay calm. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. I began to notice the glances. They were not direct, but you could feel them. Whispered comments, people checking their phones, others avoiding my eyes. I tried calling her. No answer. I sent messages. Nothing. That was when the situation started to feel wrong. Megan was not the most punctual person, but she would not simply disappear, especially not on a day like this. I looked around for someone from her side, and that was when I noticed something I had not fully processed. Her family was not there. Not her parents, not her siblings, no one who truly mattered to her. At that moment, I felt an unease I could not quite explain. I tried to convince myself there was a logical reason. Maybe they would show up later or something had come up, but every minute that passed made that less believable. An hour and a half went by, then 2 hours. Some guests began to leave with polite excuses, words of support, and awkward silences. I stayed, repeating that she must be on her way, even though I no longer believed it. Just as I was considering calling everything off, the door opened. Everyone turned at once. There was Megan, but not as she should have been. She was not wearing a wedding dress. She had no special makeup or hairstyle. She walked in wearing everyday clothes, comfortable jeans, and a loose top, as if she had left the house without much thought. For a second I thought something serious had happened, maybe an accident or an emergency. I stepped toward her. "Are you all right?" I began, but she did not let me finish. She laughed. It was not nervous or awkward. It was aimed straight at me, and in that instant I understood. Behind her walked Justin, a co-worker of hers she had mentioned several times, always describing him as just a friend. The room went completely silent, a heavy quiet that filled the space. Megan looked me up and down as if sizing up something she was not sure about. Then she shook her head slightly. "Did you really think I would go through with marrying you like this?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I did not answer. My mind was still trying to catch up. Justin let out a short laugh behind her. That told me this was not spontaneous. Megan took a couple of steps farther into the room and looked around. "Look at this," she continued. "Basic tables, hardly any guests. You could not even fill a small space. No one spoke. No one moved. Is this the best you can do?" she added, turning back toward me. It was not really a question. It was a statement. I felt something strange in my chest, but it was not immediate anger. It felt more like detachment, as if I were watching the scene from outside myself. "I told you," Justin added, still laughing. "But you wanted to see it for yourself, right?" That line made everything clear. This was not only her idea. He had known too. The whole thing had been planned. Megan sighed, as if the situation bored her. "Well, we have seen enough," she said. She turned slightly, But before leaving, she added, "I really hope you never get married, because I feel sorry for anyone who would have to settle for this." Then she turned and walked out. Justin followed without another word. The door closed, and the silence returned. I stood there without reacting, without saying anything. I did not shout. I did not chase after her. I did not create a scene. I simply remained still. The only thing I remember clearly is how quiet the room became, as if everything had paused for a few seconds. Then, gradually, reality settled back in. I looked at the guests' faces, some uncomfortable, others full of pity, a few avoiding my eyes. And then I understood something more. This had not been a sudden decision. It had been building for some time. The missing family, the long delay, the way she walked in, everything fit. I had been the only one who had not seen it coming. Someone approached and asked if I was okay. I do not remember who. I just nodded. Almost on autopilot, I began moving without direction, as if motion was the only thing that still made sense. I did not formally cancel anything. It simply fell apart on its own. People left gradually. Some offered a few words I barely heard. Others slipped out in silence. In the end, I was nearly alone. The room looked unchanged. Tables still set, food still waiting, decorations still in place. Everything exactly as it had been prepared for something that was no longer going to happen. I did not cry that day or the next. It was not immediate sadness. It was more like an emptiness, as if my mind were trying to reorganize everything I had thought my life was and did not yet know where to begin. The following days felt strange. There was no single moment when it all hit me. Instead, it was like running on autopilot. I got up, drove to work, did what needed to be done, and returned to the apartment without thinking too much about anything. I avoided talking about what had happened, not because people asked a lot, but because I did not really have anyone to discuss it with in depth. I have never been someone with a wide circle of friends, and the few I had were not the type for deep conversations about something like this. So I carried on as if nothing had changed. Or at least I tried. But reality began to catch up in other ways, mainly through my phone. A few days later, I started seeing Megan's posts on social media. At first, I did not want to look, but curiosity won. The first photo showed her at the beach, smiling. Next to her was Justin, standing very close. I kept scrolling. There were more pictures, some of them hugging, others holding hands, others simply laughing as if the past had never existed. What stood out most was not the images, but the caption on one of them. Sometimes you just need to look right beside you to realize the right person was there all along. I read it several times, trying to find any meaning other than the obvious one. There was none. It was a clear, public statement with no attempt to hide anything. I looked at the comments. Many came from friends and acquaintances, and then one from her mother. "I am glad you opened your eyes in time. You deserve better." That was when I stopped looking for explanations. It was not only Megan. Her whole circle had been part of it. I had never really fit in, and probably never had a real chance. I closed the app, did not reply, did not comment, and simply stopped checking. Time passed. Weeks turned into months. My life settled into a new kind of normal, different but functional. I kept working, paid down the loan from the wedding that never happened, adjusted my budget, and slowly rebuilt my stability. It was not fast, but it was steady. There were moments when I questioned whether I had missed signs, whether I had been lacking in some way, whether any of it could have been avoided. Over time, those questions lost their importance, not because I found answers, but because they no longer changed anything. Meanwhile, I heard less and less about Megan. At first, she posted often, pictures, quotes, stories, all centered on her new relationship. They appeared happy, or at least that was what they showed. Then gradually the posts slowed, the activity decreased, the public sharing faded until she was barely visible online at all. I did not think much about it. I figured they had chosen to keep things private or had simply moved on from sharing so much. Honestly, it did not affect me. My attention was on getting my own life back in order. Until one ordinary afternoon, everything returned in the most unexpected way. I was driving home from work, tired and thinking about routine things, when I saw her standing in the parking lot of my apartment complex. For a second, I thought I might be imagining it. After everything that had happened, I never expected to see her again. But it was Megan. She was not wearing noticeable makeup or stylish clothes. She lacked the confidence she once carried. She looked different, more worn. I stopped a few feet away. I did not approach right away. She took the first step. "Hi," she said, as if there were not years of history behind that single word. I did not answer immediately. I was trying to understand why she was there. "Why now?" She avoided my eyes for a few seconds, then spoke. "I need to talk to you." That was when I noticed something else I had missed at first glance. Her body had changed. Her belly was noticeably rounded. There was no need to ask. She was expecting a child. I looked back at her face, and everything started to make sense. She had not returned by chance or out of regret. She had returned out of necessity. I did not show any dramatic reaction. I simply nodded slightly. "Let us go inside," I said, motioning toward the building entrance. It was direct, not aggressive. She took a half step, but did not fully move aside. "Just give me a minute," she replied. "Please." Her tone was different now. The confidence was gone. What remained was urgency and desperation. I stayed quiet for a few seconds. If I did not listen, I knew she would not leave. "1 minute," I finally said. She took a deep breath, as if she had been holding everything inside for a long time, and began to speak. Megan talked quickly, afraid she might lose the courage to finish. She said that at first everything with Justin had seemed exactly as the social media posts showed. Outings, trips, laughs. She had felt certain about her choice. But when she learned she was expecting, things changed. According to her, Justin did not take the news well and pressured her to end the pregnancy. She decided she could not do that. Then he shifted his approach. He told her he would take responsibility, but needed to move to another state for better paying work, that it would be best for all three of them. She believed him. He left, and he never came back. He blocked her on the phone, on social media, everywhere. He sent no money, offered no explanations. He simply disappeared. While she spoke, I did not interrupt. I wanted to hear the full story so I could understand exactly how far it had gone. Then she talked about her family. Her mother had asked her to leave the house when she found out about the pregnancy. She wanted nothing to do with the situation. Now Megan was staying with a friend, another woman facing similar circumstances. Both were expecting, both trying to support themselves however they could. When she finished, there was a short silence. She looked at me, waiting for any reaction. I nodded slowly. "I am sorry you are in this situation," I said. I meant it, not with warmth or affection, but with a detached acknowledgement. No one plans to end up like that. I took a step toward the door. She blocked my path again. "Please," she said. "Help me." There it was, the real reason. She had not come to talk or to apologize. She had come to ask. "With what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I am not asking for much," she answered quickly. "Just a little money each week, whatever you can manage, until I get back on my feet." I looked at her for a few seconds without rushing or showing emotion. "I would if I could," I replied, "but I am still paying off the loan from that wedding." I paused briefly. "The modest one, remember?" I did not raise my voice. It was direct, but not harsh. She looked down. She began to cry, not dramatically, but in a quiet, contained way, like someone already worn down. "Forgive me," she said. That was the moment I felt something. Not sympathy, more like irritation, not at the apology itself, but at the timing. "Sure," I replied. "Now you feel bad." She looked up. "That is how it works," I continued. "Some people only understand once it is their turn to face the consequences." Her expression shifted. Sadness mixed with annoyance. "You do not have the right to speak to me that way," she said, trying to regain some firmness. That told me she had not changed as much as she appeared. "You are right," I answered. "But I also have no obligation to help you." There was a tense silence, and then something I did not expect happened. She stepped back slightly and began shouting for help, claiming that I was hurting her. I stood still, stunned by the accusation. In a lower voice, she added that if I did not give her money immediately, she would tell everyone I had hurt her. I felt a cold realization. That was how far she was willing to go. She shouted louder. Nearby apartment doors began to open. A neighbor stepped out. Then another. "Leave her alone," someone called. "What is going on here?" Eyes turned toward us. Before the situation could worsen, another voice cut through. "That woman is trying to pressure him," a man from the next door apartment said. Everyone turned. "I heard her," he added. "She is asking him for money and threatening to make false claims." There was a brief pause. "And she is the same one who left him at the altar," he continued. Another neighbor nodded. "Yes, I recognize her too." The mood shifted in seconds. Megan looked around and realized she no longer had control. Some people began murmuring. Others simply watched. "It is not what it looks like," she tried to say, but it no longer sounded believable. Her expression changed to one of frustration and defeat. She turned and walked away without another word. I did not try to stop her. There was no reason to. I went inside, closed the door, and for the first time in a long while I felt a clear sense of closure. I thought that was the end, but it was not. Days later, one of the few friends who had been at the community center messaged me. "Hey, have you seen this?" He sent a screenshot. It was from an online group for people looking for serious relationships. There was a post from Megan with several photos and a description, looking for a responsible man to support me during this stage. I offer companionship, help around the house, and full commitment to building something stable. The post had been up for days with no comments and no responses. My friend wrote, not a single reply. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then closed the conversation. I stayed thinking, not about her or the past, but about something much simpler. Choices have consequences. Sometimes they take time to appear, sometimes they seem like they never will, but when they arrive completely. I did not feel joy or sadness, only a quiet acceptance, like when something finally settles into place without needing any further explanation. That is how some stories end, not with a perfect ending, but with one that is logical and enough. Comment: this story really stayed with me. I hope it gave you a moment to reflect on your own path, too. My main takeaway is how important it is to keep your self-respect strong. Setting clear boundaries is actually an act of self-love. You have to face the consequences of your decisions, and taking responsibility helps you move forward. Healing starts when you focus on your own well-being instead of waiting for apologies. Choosing peace has become one of my most important priorities. Be kind whenever you can, but always protect your heart and energy. Look at the people around you and make sure they add to your peace. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, and I know you have the power to create them. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.